A very good evening to all of you. On behalf of ET Brand Equity and Clever Tap, I extend a warm welcome to all of you to Big Leap, Rise with Attention Roadshow, Bangalore Chapter. Bengaluru, this is Bangalore Chapter. Come on, everyone. My name is Anita. I'm your host for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Jess Kirkwood had once said, customer experience is one of the two core pillars of customer retention. The thing is, you cannot grow if your customer don't stick around, and I totally agree with him. Do you? Yeah? Thank you. The Big Leap will host exclusive interviews, multiple city roadshows, digital dialogues, networking events, and informal meetup with India's digital pioneers. Ladies and gentlemen, today at the Rise with Attention Roadshow Bangalore Chapter, as co-organized by ET Brand Equity and Clever Tap, will deep dive into customers' journey and how brand can create customized solution to retain them. We are also glad to host our esteemed speakers who will share their big leap stories and shed light on how to create hyper-personalized customer experience. I have one important announcement to make, and that is our social media hashtag, which is very important. Yes, hashtag The Big Leap, hashtag Retain to Gain. I shall repeat, hashtag Big Leap and hashtag Retain to Gain, and you can catch all the live updates on ET Brand Equity and Clever Tap. Clever Tap. With that, let's begin before moving on to our first session of the day, which is very important, very interesting, and we've all been waiting for. I would request you to think about the last time you had a personalized experience. It can be anything, like absolutely anything, which made you feel great. Maybe, for example, it was a personalized workout for you at the gym, or comfort of having your car automatically adjust your seat as per your specification, or you just walk into any cafe and they start preparing or making your favorite coffee. Wow. Doesn't that thing bring a big smile on your face? Does it? Yes or no? Yes, thank you. This very personalization at scale requires very granular insights. Not just that, but crystal clear strategy, the ability to analyze data at scale, and to get more insights. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, to get more insights, let's dive deeper on hyper-personalization itself in the featured session line ahead. With that, yes, we are all set to begin. To set the tone of today's evening, I would like to invite on stage none other than Mr. Anuj Rathi, Senior Vice President, Central Revenue and Growth, Swiggy, for a featured session on hyper-personalization at scale. Anuj leads growth, marketing, customer lifecycle management, and merchandising, among others. He has played many roles in Swiggy, including R&G, Head of Food Marketplace, and Product Management, Head of Revenue, User Growth, Restaurant Growth, and New Initiatives. So, ladies and gentlemen, I request all of you to put your hands together. Let's welcome him on stage. Everyone, a very, very warm welcome to you, and over to you, Anuj.
So thank you, Anita. Thank you, ET and Clever Tap, for having me here and to talk about hyper-personalization at scale. And as I was speaking with Sonali a couple of weeks back, that before we even start talking about hyper-personalization, the first thing that we should address is why do we even want to think about creating one-to-one experiences for our users? What are the steps to reach there? And what was Swiggy's journey like? So essentially, we basically talked about, let's take this as a case study and let's talk about what was Swiggy's journey like as we reached hyper-personalization, or we are still in the process of reaching hyper-personalization, and what are the steps, the right ones or the missteps, etc., that we took, and the learnings on the way that we feel are relevant for a whole bunch of other organizations as well. So before I get to the slide, and it's just one slide, so before I get to that one, I'll give a 5-minute introduction of the context and what our company is, and then talk about how do we think about growth in this at Swiggy, and how does personalization and segmentation kind of play a large part of that. So Swiggy has been around for 8 years now. I know many of you would be Swiggy customers or Zomato customers, but some sort of food delivery, grocery, quick commerce delivery customers, etc., right? And so we started 8 years back, and very small company. We started in 2014 in just one area, Koramangala, Indranagar, and so on. We found an instant product market fit with our food delivery. We expanded into multiple cities. 7, 8 cities, we perfected that playbook. We expanded into many, many more cities. Now we are in 600. And we have created like food delivery as a service, which is kind of standard across India. We're very proud of that. In the last few years, we have seen COVID, and during that time, we also looked back to our users and said, what are the ways in which we can solve for convenience for the users, even in this kind of scenario. Those were the days where Instamart was born. That's our grocery delivery play. We also have Swiggy Genie, which is a pickup and drop service. We do meat delivery. Very few people know that we do alcohol delivery also, not in Bangalore, but in a few states, and so on and so forth. We have recently acquired Dineout. So recently, what's happened is it's a proliferation of categories and Swiggy being one platform that serves so many different convenience needs for the customers. We started in one area, and we realized one thing very, very quickly, that you cannot give one experience or the same experience to all set of users. There's a base experience that you have to provide. That kind of becomes your brand promise. But if you keep on doing the brand, just the base experience for all users, you are losing out big time. You are losing out big time because you are really using one flat hammer for all the different problems that can happen, for different kind of segments, for different kind of context, and so on. We especially realize that because we are a three-way marketplace, we are a hyperlocal marketplace, we are an on-demand, in-time marketplace. And that's very different, for example, from say an Amazon or which is e-commerce or a Flipkart, et cetera, right? Like you have in those areas, in those companies, you have a national catalog. And while personalization largely can work on choice, et cetera, in our case, it really works. A breakfast slot is different than a lunch slot, is different than a dinner slot, is different than late nights and so on. There are a variety of factors that kind of come in. Some days at one place you will have only 500 delivery executives, but 2,000 customers knocking at your door. Now, how do you personalize? Which customers do you let in, and which customer do you search for? Do you start showing results which are, I'll show you only close by restaurants versus somebody else, I will start turning off discounts from outer radius, etc. There are very, very clever strategies that can be deployed. The point that I'm trying to make is we were born in scarcity, and because we were born in scarcity, and it's a peaky business. Your lunches and dinners are kind of highs and lows, and you are never going to be able to have like a consistent flow of your supply coming in. So we were forced in a way that we had to personalize. So it's a good thing that kind of born the DNA of personalization. We started looking at customers in an angle, which are the most valuable customers for us. So we started doing what we call a 3-dimensional segmentation. One is your behavior, the other one is value, and third one is status, auqat, like whatever you want to call it, like which one do you want to preserve, and because different kind of users have very different expectations from the same service. So while we started doing that, from that we essentially understood and we started building solutions which were hyper-personalized for that. And in the part of the journey, we were still very naive. We were looking for, at that time, sabka saath, sabka vikas. So all customers are treated equal. Let's hyper-personalize for their experience, etc. But over a period of time, we also realized that this is just talking about how can I make every customer's life the best one. But we are still missing one large part of what is possible with hyper-personalization. One is, of course, improving customer experience, but B is how can we personalize to strategy. And that's something that I want to talk about today and where we are in the journey. So let's talk about overall. Very simple looking one slide, as I promised you, right? So initially when we started, we really didn't understand our customers in a variety of different ways. We essentially looked at what are the different, and again, all of these are only representative. I'll explain some of these things. Don't take them factually. We started realizing that we have to put like an overall flywheel and an overall strategy in place around where different segments of customers are, and at each point in their journey, in their relationship with Swiggy, how much should we personalize, and for what reason should we personalize? So, and some of them will be illustrated as I take you through the very simple flywheel, right? Like, and you can Google around, for example, Amazon and Uber's flywheel also. You will kind of realize how that works. So this is what we call a growth flywheel. We are in a business where we were the category creators. There are a lot of new users who have never even tried the category. Even now, only 100 million Indians have ever tried any food or grocery delivery platform. There are still a lot of users who have tried e-commerce, for example. They are new users. Now, when we want to get a new user, how do we get these users, or how do we actually let them make their first order? So literally the starting point of personalization starts there. And literally look at each point, and then that you can really understand how can I hyper-personalize for a particular goal that I'm trying to hit. So we try to acquire them, and how do we even understand that, hey, what is the kind of user base in city 1 versus city 2 versus city 3? How does it behave for what kind of supply? How can it really work? So we have to hyper-personalize at city level and slot level and so on, but for what reason? We want to acquire this user so that they move into at least first step of relationship with Swiggy. And so once somebody has done one order, so we try like a whole bunch of things, organic, brand, discounting, SEO, all of those things, ultimately to increase our 30 days user conversion. It's moved from X to Y. Once the user does a food order or a grocery order, either of them, they become what we call acquired user. This is the time, so after a few, every user will not tell you whether they are a profitable user for you or not, etc. We have to kind of understand and realize and start measuring the data, that are these what we call a core user, or these are non-core user at a very high level. Well, actually, again, as I said, this is not how we truly measure. We have like almost a Rubik's Cube kind of a segmentation framework, but irrespective. Do we want that user or do we not want, and how badly do we want that user? So that's where the first set of personalization starts. For users that we have realized are core users for us, we really want to move them to the next, step of loyalty. An activated user or an acquired user, well, if the non-core user goes dormant, we don't really mind. We will not personalize for you. We'll definitely not punish you as well. We will not personalize for you. But for a core user, we want to really make you activated. Now, what defines activation? And that's where like a lot of data analysis, as I think Anita was talking about, and the insights that are driven through that data really comes. So I'll share one tidbit of information here. If a user places 4 orders in a month on Swiggy in one category, in food, then their probability of ordering next month is 75%. So we know that's a good thing. The first month, what do we want that user to do? If a user places 4 grocery orders on Swiggy, also their probability is 75%. But if they place only one grocery order, then also they reach that state of loyalty. And that's a fantastic insight. Because essentially what we are understanding is creating new habits are the ones that take the user to the next level of loyalty. And 2 habits doesn't only mean 2 categories. If somebody has ordered from home and ordered from office, these are 2 habits, and they reach to the next level. If somebody has ordered from lunch and dinner, these are 2 habits. So more habits that you're able to create, the more your strategy will basically tell you should take the user to the next level. And that's where a lot of personalization and hyper-personalization comes in. For a user who has ordered, can I actually cross-sell early in their journey so that they stay an acquired user? And if you're able to do that, you will be able to really, really reduce a whole bunch of churn that you would be expecting down the lane. So what could be a personalized discount? What could be a personalized message that I can tell the user? How can I give these users or the set of core users a, red carpet experience? How do I definitely not screw up their orders? Because this is, you have to like handhold them. How can I not put a cancellation policy for them for now? Like eventually it will be important, but how do I make sure that their journey is awesome? In the same way, the activity, I don't know whether this slide is very clear or not, but we'll move from here. Now for an acquired user, now if these are my core users, then what do I want to do? I want to give them a lot of experiential benefits. I want to make sure that I'm giving them a lot of value. I will give them a lot of top-ups, discounts, and so on, so that they remain engaged on my platform. Actually, this one is better. We've already talked about cross-pollination. Another habit, for example, could be built, which is I'm ordering for me, if I order for my wife, etc. So all of these are pillars on top of which a lot of loyalty is built. But really, that is not. Remember, this is still an app that any user can go to instantly. So there are many, many competitors available. What is the true insurance of loyalty? The true insurance is a membership program, at least in our case. A lot of cases, many companies have membership programs. And in our case, it's called Swiggy One. So how do I get my best set of users, and how can I personalize for them so that they move to the next set of loyalty, which is a membership program. And the membership program is called Swiggy One. They will either move through it organically, or for core users, I will try trial packs, I will try discounted plans, I will try a whole bunch of these other things so that I am able to move them. And again, this kind of follows a very, very nice funnel, but personalization, it is at every angle. Now notice this part, because I'm just talking about personalization from a growth point of view, not yet from an experience point of view. For example, each session can be personalized to n level of complexity also. So every time a user comes, which set of restaurants should I show, which menu items do I like, whether I'm veg or non-veg, whether I'm ordering for family or myself, and so on. All of that is session personalization that of course you have to do. So I'm just not talking about that. The lens that I'm taking here is a long-term lens of a user, and how do you build relationship with the user and use personalization to strategy. Like if you do not have a strategy, the thing that at least in Swiggy we have learned is that you could keep on personalizing at all the wrong places, and you'll still give a lot of users a lot of good experiences, but did it move anything that you want? Like, did it really hit your North Star metrics and so on? So here, even in Swiggy one, what else could we do? Like these are other things that, for example, we are thinking about. Like Swiggy today is a vending machine. No, sorry, Swiggy is a, correct. You have to go and you have to pay and you have to take something out. Every time is a payment. From a vending machine, how can you make it a refrigerator? You go and just pick things, and at the end of the month, my father stocks it up. Could we do BNPL there? Could you add another layer which adds another level of loyalty? Now, even each of these things, a buy now, pay later, or any solution, how much should be the limit? How much should I penalize? Should I actually reduce any particular features from them, etc., are all going to becoming a part of that. So that's kind of overall the understanding of Flywheel. And this is the starting point, in my opinion, of all your segmented experiences and how much do you want to put your personalization energies into each of these buckets to hit your strategy and to get to the best retention curves. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, marketing is fast shifting away from the one-size-fits-all strategy and moving closer to providing an individual experience for each customer. Today, customers want brands to anticipate their needs and create hyper-personalized experiences. They want brands to communicate with them in an extremely contextual and relevant manner across stages of the life cycle. With that, I request everyone join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists for this evening as they uncover what hyper-personalization means now and how it will evolve in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together while I welcome Mr. Raghu Krishnananda, Chief Technology and Product Officer, Myntra, on stage. Everyone. Raghu has over 25 years of experience in product development, holding senior management positions in leading global companies, building platforms and services in web, mobile, finance domain. A warm welcome to everyone once again. Our next panelist is Mr. Krishnan Venkateshwaran, Chief Digital and Information Officer, Titan India. Titan is reinventing itself as a phygital organization, one that seamlessly combines the best of physical and digital products and services to deliver truly new age experiences. And Mr. Krishnan is excited to be part of this journey. Everyone, let's welcome Mr. Krishnan. Mr. Sudhakar Pandey, founding team, product engineering and data science, Mensa Brands. He's a product and technology leader with 18 years of experience with more than a decade in e-commerce across Mensa, Myntra, and Flipkart. He has extensive experience in e-commerce heading product functions. Everyone, once again, ladies and gentlemen. Up next, I would like to invite Mr. Nirmal NR, Chief Executive Officer, India Zoomcar. Nirmal is an entrepreneurial leader having over 14 years of experience with a strong record in setting up new businesses, scaling up operations, strategy development, goal setting, and implementation. He is responsible for all aspects of growth, operations, and customer experience for Zoomcar in India. Once again, requesting all of you to put your hands together. Let's welcome Mr. Nirmal NR. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Monish Kaul, Chief Technology and Product Officer, Zivame, on stage. He has over a decade of experience in helping to build organizations that deliver innovative solutions by applying cutting-edge methodologies and managing engineering and product teams in the digital economy. Everyone, once again. I would now like to invite Mr. Prashant Verma, Chief Revenue Officer, Licious, on stage. Prashant brings in 16 years of experience across growth, brand building, strategy, marketing, sales and banking, having worked in diverse sectors, including e-commerce, customer interest, and customer goods, to name a few. Everyone, let's welcome Mr. Prashant Verma, Chief Revenue Officer. She is on stage. Up next, we have invited him a couple of times, but let's invite him again on stage. Mr. Abhishek Gupta, Chief Customer Officer, Clever Tap on stage. He's a seasoned business leader and has led a number of SaaS and internet businesses with an immense focus on customer success and thereby building high-growth business. So we have 8 panelists, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 panelists on stage. Everyone. All right, the very important part of the panel discussion is the moderator. So ladies and gentlemen, to moderate this very, very interesting session, we have Mr. Gautam Srinivasan, our senior generalist. Put your hands together. Let's welcome the expertise in editorial and branded content. Spans an 18 years journey with leading media conglomerates in Asia. He also anchors a variety of TV, digital shows, and events on enterprise technology, personal finance, education, health, and economy for corporate and business media network. Over to Mr. Gautam Srinivasan. Let's begin this interesting panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Anita. Indeed, when she was counting the chairs, even I got confused. And she was already said 8, so I'm like, there's one more panelist about to be added. But, well, I hope this is enough. You've got a variety of perspectives here, from Licious to Titan, from meats to watches to cars to, I can just keep going on and on. But we are in the eve where usually attention spans start to kind of waver. So I'm going to try and make this as interesting as possible. And of course, I couldn't ask for a better support in terms of speakers that we have for the topic that we are going to discuss today, which is creating hyper-personalized customer experiences. More importantly, at scale, because that's where the game is. All of your enterprises have scaled so exponentially. Last 4-5 years, we've seen so many changes, so much growth happening. It is important in that context to understand how all these big brands don't just attract customers, but they manage to retain customers. So I'm looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts. A quick round of applause for all of them. And looking at the faces in the audience, I'm reminded of a ghazal. Tum itna jo muskura rahe ho, kya gam hai jisko chupa rahe ho. But there's a lesson there as well in terms of when companies try to understand customers, right? Because they're trying to make sense of the customer conversation and make sure that what they are communicating to the customer is effective in terms of creating that engagement. So we'll get a slice of life from all of our panelists in understanding that how they manage to do it. We're going to divide this conversation into 2 segments. I'll have a rapid fire round with all of you just to get those initial perspectives in, and then we'll kind of get down to the brass tacks and understand all of your growth and retention stories. So Raghu, let's start with you in terms of this unique engagements that everyone talks about. Everyone wants to have it, but they're kind of wondering, where do we start? So for them, if you could give a reference point in terms of a unique engagement experience that you offer to your customers at scale, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me on the panel. Couple of years ago, Myntra made a foray into social commerce. So I'll just take that as the example for engagement. So we launched a product called Studio, and then followed it up last year by actually enabling live streaming on our platform called Myntra Live. Right? So what this does is it provides a platform for influencers in the country to showcase their style hacks, their fashion tips, their products, and so on. And it provides fashion inspiration for our customers, a place where our customers can go and get some
so
ideas.
you're getting them directly onto your platform so that you can have that customer conversation rather than just a pure shopping experience.
Absolutely.
It's also a learning experience for your customers.
So we see that, in fact, we have thousands of, influencers, contributing actively onto the platform. And we have 1 in 4 Myntra users who actually engage with this content.
Who do you follow?
No,
No comments.
Nobody in particular. Yeah, and we see really good retention rates, right? So what this really means is that we are not only bringing fashion inspiration to our customers, and of course we provide a way for them to be to shop there, right? So all of the content that is shown by the influencers are shoppable on Myntra.
All right.
So this provides a very unique and compelling engagement experience for customers.
All right, that's the Myntra example. Krishnan, let's hear the Titan example. It's a brand we've all been used to since we were young, where at least, don't go by this beard. So as you're digital first now, some unique engagement experiences at scale that Titan is doing that you'd like to share?
I would say it's the omni-channel combination of the digital and the store experience, which we have been trying to get right. And from thousands of customers' feedback over the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years, we are getting it more and more right? So a customer could start off with us digitally, visit our web, and then engage with us on a conversation, which could be a live chat, or even a video call from the store in which we are showcasing merchandise. And then the customer could come for a focused visit to the store. And this actually was a very valuable capability during 2020 till recently. Now that we are seeing the happy phenomenon of store traffic coming back, which I think all of us should be happy about personally as well as professionally. But during that time, customers did not want to spend the kind of time in our stores which ordinarily they used to. And so we were enabled to create this omni-channel capability by which the customer could shortlist merchandise based on a digital conversation, a digital experience, come to the store, choose from, let's say, 3 or 4 products that they had identified. And so that made for a very efficient and unified experience right across. And we have been collecting information with our customers' consent for many years. And there are many more examples of how we have been able to personalize the individual conversations, but I guess that's for later.
All right. I follow chess sometimes, and the Chess Olympiad has just concluded. And surprisingly, in one of the videos, I noticed that Titan was shown as showcasing some of its new collections. I believe Grandmaster has been launched. So you're more active in terms of contextualizing that engagement also from a phygital experience. All right. Prashant, let me come to you from, when we look at the meats category. 10 years ago, getting meats delivered to home wasn't known as a practice. You guys managed to change that. So tell us, as you are scaling up exponentially right now, the most unique customer engagement experience that Licious is offering right now.
Right. So I think one thing I would like to say is that we're not just a meat company, but we're also a meat delivery company.
Okay.
Right? So I think from consumer goods, we're also consumer services. Right? And I think the example which I would like to share is pretty much about a post-order experience, which a lot of brands incidentally forget. Right? And being e-commerce, right, and being D2C means that you don't just own the product that goes in the customer's house, but you also own the delivery experience and the service which goes inside a customer's
A bit
house.
louder, I think, folks. Let's hear the meat of the conversation.
All right. Yeah, so I think I was saying that we're not just a goods company, but we're also a services company. And being e-commerce and D2C means that it's not just the product that's actually being delivered to a consumer's house, but also the entire experience. For us, a post-order engagement experience has been the recipes which we actually send to consumers. Now, all of us know that 7 p.m. Or that 6 p.m. Pang which our moms had, right? Aaj khane mein kya banao? Yeah. So when when people actually shop from Licious, we actually send them surprise recipe videos at the end of that transaction when it actually gets delivered. They can choose from any 5. Apart from that, we also have a ready-to-cook range. We also send a how-to-cook videos along with it, so which essentially means how do you cook with it. So we're pretty much doing these videos at scale. We use PNs, we use emails, we use WhatsApp to actually engage our consumers on this basis. And this has led to both increase in stickiness through retention as well as repeat.
All right. Now that we've covered 3 brands, let's go to the 4th brand before I move on to the next question. Zoom Cars example, Nirmal. I mean, it's a heavily competitive space right now. So to differentiate yourself, and also car rentals, it will require a bit more lateral thinking in terms of getting folks on board. What are your most unique engagement experiences that you would share?
Sure. So first, before that, let me ask you a question. Who among the 8 of us is the best driver?
I don't drive.
I
tried once, I left that experience.
Or maybe we can do that for the whole audience also. So, do you know who is the best driver here?
I think that silence.
If you used a Zoom car, maybe we know. because we have a driver score for each of the trips that a person does. It's based on all the data that's captured during the trip. It is, so for us, our engagement is through a trip, right? Somebody takes a car, he uses it for maybe 6 days. He's driving through the day, these 6 days. We exactly know how well a driver are you. And according to that, there are a lot of rewards and a lot of engagement that you can do according to that, right? So you can be the best driver in Bangalore, or maybe like me, you may be the 59 out of 100. So I am 59 out of 100. I am better than 59 people, or rather 59% of the people. So that is where I am. But there are a lot of people who are at 85. Well, obviously, there is somebody who is very high also, right? So that is how personalized each of the Zoom car trips that you take are. So that is what we do.
We used to do something similar when I was in one of the media networks, because anchors inevitably would get late. So they would call each other and ask, who's the driver who can get me from Lower Parel, from Versova to Lower Parel in 30 minutes? And you would know, get that driver, and then you would just start praying, and well, you reach your destination, but you do get closer to God as you do it. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about knowing the context of that engagement that you're doing it, and then bringing in your special ingredient using technology and saying, this is how we make your lives better. All right, that's the first round of the rapid fire round. Let's now understand, which hyper personalization technique is most effective when it comes to increasing conversions and reducing churn. So let's look at it from the perspective of, maybe Sudhakar, you could start. Mensa Brands, considering you're a house of brands, you bring something unique to the table here. So would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So just for the context, right, guys who don't understand what is a house of brand, house of brand is literally having multiple brands under one roof, right? And then you have to personalize the experience, not obviously for the brand, for the category, and then for the individual users, right? So it's a lot more complicated. Also for information, we sell through multiple channels, right? So the channels could be different marketplaces, our own D2C platforms, as well as offline, right? So you can understand the level of complexity that we deal with. Coming to D2C, right? See, what happens in D2C is like, unlike other businesses, right? It's a somehow known fact that ROASes are dropping and CACs, just going up, through the roof. So it's very important to go beyond transactions and build a long-term relationship with the customer. So get them convert and then retain them, right? Because it's always cheaper to retain a customer than acquire a new customer. So that's one. I would say the second one is where build deep retention and engagement strategy, right? Backed by personalization, and do it at scale in a sustainable manner. Right? So that's the two key things which I would say is important from the D2C point of view.
All right, Manish, let me come to you from Zivame's perspective. When we talk about hyper-personalization at scale, in your opinion, the technique which is most effective to kind of increase conversion and reduce churn, your thoughts on this?
So Zivame is a intimate wear company, right? So at that point, as a category, it's a mid-frequency category, mid-frequency company. And at that time, it's very important for us to tweak the channels as well as the way we deliver personalization. As someone rightly said, it's not about delivering everywhere. We are a house of brand company as well. So we curate and select the brands very carefully over which we want to deliver personalization. Plus, it's the medium of personalization as well. Like you will see, we do personalize. We are an app-first company, so we do personalize like medium channels like push notifications and all for the active customer base, which would be like 60% contextual, I guess 40% non-contextual and blanket in nature. The remaining, let's say other things like showroom phygital experiences, things we can do in showroom or showroom first and then take to a digital experience, or digital first and then take to a showroom experience. We focus a lot there as well. Like one of the hit initiatives we had were Fit Code, which was basically we allow a woman personalize the experience for herself before we as a company show our confidence and try to personalize for it. And that was adopted across 45% of our customer base and was a major success. So that was one approach we took differently than what we conventionally do in standard personalization things. we allowed the user to profile themselves and then saw a difference in choice for those 45% by 50% more. So 50% of the women who were choosing to take that project as a feature, and they basically showed that they personalized the product for themselves practically, right? And then we simply took that experience to the physical stores as well, and that worked as well again. And now we are trying to create that physical experience that when you walk into a showroom, we already know what your profile is and how it's changing over time, and can our human executive help you at runtime to figure out what you already want, right?
All right.
So that is what we're
That's also part of the narrative where you are enterprises are co-creating value with their customers and giving them more control over
Correct.
that engagement
Correct. So
experience.
personalization essentially has to be about control, right? We implicitly or explicitly can derive and identify and judge on signals which we think are right, but the user knows it, right? So you, at the end, you have to trust the user, and you are just making your best judgment. But if there is a way to take that input from the user, that would be always 100% correct.
All right, Abhishek, let me get you in to kind of respond to a variety of perspectives which have been shared, especially on this aspect of hyper-personalization. We all talk about it, but when we look at hyper-personalization at scale, I'm sure a lot of the audience would be interested in knowing the techniques which are right now the focus for a lot of the big growth enterprises when it comes to, say, increasing conversion and reducing churn. So as an enabler, what would you have to say?
Right. So I think the perspectives that we just heard, right, they are so true. And we as a company, we work with thousands of brands globally. So we get a sort of a ringside view in terms of the strategies that the brands are adopting in terms of providing a great experience to the users through hyper-personalization. And different brands, depending upon the strategy, adopt different approaches. But we are seeing consistency in 2 or 3 key areas. One is, like when people started doing personalization in the beginning, it was a little bit trivial in that sense, like attaching a name to a message. Then it got in the context of like sales and special events, right, to drive transactions. What we're really seeing is brands focusing on the entire customer life cycle and personalizing all the experiences, because the sum total of that experiences is a lot more valuable than those experiences in isolation. And we're seeing that resulting in a huge amount of benefit. The second thing that we are seeing is, you spoke about scale. I think scale, interestingly, like if I look back a couple of years back, it was a little bit of an afterthought. Like, let me build my business, let me try and get some market presence, then think about scale. But when you have to provide hyper-personalized experiences to millions of users multiple times during the day, scale cannot be an afterthought. It has to be front and center of your strategy. So we are seeing brands having a great deal of focus in terms of thinking about the scale in the beginning itself. And not as an afterthought, which means how they think about the data, how they bring all the data together to be able to provide those experiences. So a lot of those strategies have changed. The third thing that we are seeing is an evolution in terms of the core tenets of hyper-personalization. A lot of times we think about the content, like is the content personalized? What we have seen is when we think about conversion rates, there are 2 other variables which have a huge amount of impact on conversion rates. The first one is the context. The content is only as good as the context in which you're providing it. And the key variable to the context is the timing of it. So if a user is in the app looking at a particular merchandise, and if you're able to engage with that user in that split second, that is a lot more valuable than engaging with that user on an email 2 days later. So we are seeing brands achieving extremely high conversion rates by engaging with the users in their context and doing so in real time.
All right, the question that you raised, how many are thinking actively about scale? Let's look at the audience and let's see how many of you are working at, say, startups right now, just to check. All right, we see a large majority. How many of you are thinking actively about scale, as in it's not an afterthought? Number slightly bent down, so we'll make sure that that number comes up to parity. But taking the conversation forward and wrapping up the rapid fire round, I also want to understand which retention channel plays the most important role in your marketing efforts at scale, whether it's say mails or push notifications or retargeted advertising. Krishnan, we'll start with you. A quick view from you.
Actually, I was wondering about the ghazal he quoted. Now, you're trying to discover secrets of stickiness from us, and you're asking us, "Kya gum hai jisko chupa rahe ho?" Sorry for the PG, but you probably know our brands, and I hope many of you have shopped at our stores. So our store experience is really what we consider to be the superpower, so to say, right? And especially in jewelry, but in watches and saris as well, the highest value and the most intricate and well-made products are genuinely touch and feel category. So, like I said, any journey that starts digitally usually concludes in the store, right? And so our store sales team to customer connect is really the one we have invested in quite a bit. So we have a CRM which is now implemented right across, and we nudge and provide cues to our sales colleagues to make warm calls to customers who they are already engaged with. And that engagement itself is a serious contributor to our revenue. And so if I were to name one single superpower in Titan, I would say it is our connect of our thousands of sales colleagues in our stores with our customers across the country, and it's over the years. So hyper-personalization, nothing to match a salesperson who's been in the company for that long and knows a customer for that long. Right?
All right, the human element is...
Absolutely, and especially in our product category where novelty is also a factor. It's not, it's
the
much...
bespoke experience, is that what you would
Oh, our made-to-order business itself is a significant double-digit portion of our jewelry business. So, made-to-order jewelry in which our designer works with our customers to craft something special for an occasion, wedding or any other. So, we look at the human element very closely and keep it right in front. And the way in which we are able to aid our colleagues digitally is also improving by leaps and bounds.
All right, Raghu, your thoughts, the most important retention channel in your marketing efforts at scale?
Yeah, it's a multi-channel strategy for us. So it depends on the cohort in which this user falls, and also where this particular user is in the purchase journey. So depending on that, we use one or more or all of the above, whatever you mentioned. Something new that we've tried recently is WhatsApp as a channel, right? So, and it's actually, we're cautiously,
How's that going?
Cautiously optimistic.
People have been going into it, but results have been mixed,
right,
so to say.
So it seems quite positive so far, but it's early days for us, but something that we'll continue to investigate.
All right, Prashant?
It's very expensive.
It's very
expensive. Yeah.
You'll have to be a bit louder. You have insights, but folks in the backbenchers need to hear you. Sure. Your thoughts on this question?
Sure. So I'll answer it in two ways. One is about marketing, and the other is the new form of marketing. Essentially, if you're running any e-commerce business for that matter, or any business which ends up delivering products to consumers. I would borrow something which Raghu also mentioned. I don't think there is one retention channel which works, right? Retention is all about customer lifecycle management. And in that customer lifecycle management, the first and most important thing is where does the customer lie in that lifecycle, right? Which segment is the customer sitting on, and what part of the journey is the customer sitting on? That's one. Second is what is the job to be done at that point in time in the customer's lifecycle? Yeah? And the third is what role will a channel play? And hence your choice of channel comes into play here. So I think that's what I would follow from a marketing standpoint, right? And what growth and marketing teams need to do. The second thing is, think running an e-commerce business or any D2C business, the most important retention channel is customer experience. Customer experience is the new marketing, I think, right? I mean, acquisition, your marketing team can actually go out and acquire customers, but if you're not retaining them through good customer experience, there is no growth.
All right, CX is the ultimate retention channel. That's the view coming from Prashant. Manish, your thoughts on this? Look at it from a factual perspective, where you're looking at the numbers. Where do you see most of the numbers coming for when it comes to your retention channel?
Well, the biggest mental, financial and emotional investment I'll say is retargeting from a spend perspective. And that mostly works for inactive user base as well, which is generally the majority user base for any company or any house of brand or any marketplace. For active customer base, you have to see it in a very, I'll try to piggyback on his answer there. You have to see a human like a human, and they behave differently with different product situations, and they have a life cycle of their own. And post, you identify what stage or interaction level or mental investment they have with your brand or company. That is how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, how much you want to basically bug him or bother him with your, with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue him on, or, what channels you want to basically bug him or bother him with your marketing. So that's how you decide what channels you want to pursue retargeting, or let's say communication, or let's say retention initiatives. It would be great if the user chooses to retain. If doesn't, then you have to very carefully identify how much and how do you want to target him, right? Again, comes back to the same channels, but the context changes a lot. How softer or harder or how aggressive you have to go while burning money on a customer while bringing him back comes from the fact where he was with you at point of time and where is he right now. If he was a top spender and is not now, then you know you have done something horribly wrong, and that is the people, those are the people after whom you go with spending burn or money. If that is not the case, you play defensive and you keep pushing until something converts, or you eventually back off while respecting the choice of customer. So
sometimes you just need to make that call. In fact, some of the brands that I've been speaking with, they have an interesting perspective where they actually prefer if a user churns out early on, because for them, they see the user in the app for say 15, 20 days and then churning out. They think that that's actually not what they want. So better if the user gets churned out in a day or two. I'm sure those perspectives will also be brought in as part of the Big Leap campaign that we are doing. But thank you so much, Manish, for sharing your thoughts. Sudhakar, as a house of brands, the dynamic would be different for each of these brands that are with you. But broadly, when you look at the numbers, whether it's retargeted advertising or push notifications or mail, where do you see most of the activity happening?
Yeah, I think retargeting is obviously something which is very effective. To be very honest. I think also I think in terms of channel of communication or the way you reach customers, right? It changes by time, by customer, their stage at which they are in their journey with the brand and your services, right? So it is very important that you keep experimenting on channels, right? Keep trying what are the different channels which is working for a given customer segment, for a given location, for a given time, right? And whatever works, just scale it, right? Because this will keep changing over time. So that's what I would say. But for example, right, we recently experimented a lot with WhatsApp, right? And we were trying to retarget through WhatsApp. Not everything worked, right? But then we found for certain combination of brand, customer lifespan, spend, the categories in which or the products which a consumer or the services that consumer has consumed, right? And based on that, we found that sweet spot where it really works, right? So I think you have to experiment to figure out what works for your product, for your services, and just take it forward.
Absolutely, and I'll take cue of that the experimentation is necessary when we get down to the brass tacks. But when we complete this question round, let's get in Nirmal and Abhishek's perspective. And Nirmal, your thoughts on the retention channel that works?
Yeah, so I think Abhishek mentioned some of it earlier, right? It's all about the context. So for us, we are not a very high frequency use case. People don't take trips every day, right? It's like maybe once in 3 months. We want to make it once in a month, right? That is what we want. That is retention for us. And the easiest or the most effective one that we see is that when a person has come to the app once and has searched, we know that number of searches that they do before a conversion is a specific number. And we know where are they and what do they generally respond to. And at that point in time, we create an offer which communicated generally through a PN, which is a funnel drop retargeting, as you'd call it. That is something that we found way more useful, right? And if I had to choose one, I would choose that. Right.
All right. Abhishek, wrapping up the rapid fire round, again from an enabler perspective, which is working with many, many brands, where are you seeing most of the activity happen in terms of a retention channel?
Yeah, so I'll share a little bit of a strategic view and then also maybe some insights in terms of the specific channels and what we have seen. At a high level, the best channel is the one where your customer already is, not the one that you prefer. I think as enabler, as brands, I'm very conscious of that particular dynamics because consumers do not enjoy channel switching. If I enjoy being on WhatsApp, I may not really enjoy being on SMS. Like if a communication comes on SMS, I may even overlook it. So we see a lot of behavior. But what we're increasingly seeing is multi-channel marketing being adopted a lot more broadly because depending upon the customer's context, one channel may work better than others. So for example, if a customer is active in the app, then push notification is a pretty good channel to get across to the user in an effective manner But if they are dormant, then maybe email works better. And if they are churned, maybe you need to go back to them through SMS or some other medium. But all the channels have to be put in perspective based on the context and where the customers are. And that's where the segmentation becomes very, very important. Knowing where exactly a particular customer is, and then deciding the choice of channel, it has a positive outcome. Now, in terms of specific channels, push notification definitely is one of the most dominant channels that is used. Part of the reason it's free. There is no incremental marginal cost on it. So we see a lot of push notifications going out. But we've increasingly seen, especially when you look at the measure of success being conversion rates, which is what you Gautam spoke about as a measure of success. Like when I look at brands where the transaction is not just done in one go, but there is an engagement that is happening between the brand and a user. For example, if you're buying pre-owned cars, for example, even a new car, just to take an example, we have seen WhatsApp actually becoming a lot more effective channel in terms of driving conversion rates up. Similarly, we have seen when in e-commerce space, for example, broadly online retail, we have seen when brands use in-app against specific context like sale or something, then in-app messaging drives much superior conversion rates. And similarly, if a brand has to offer a lot, we have to take the personalization to the next level, which is it's no longer about the messaging, it's about the user experience on the app itself, where the UI that we see can be personalized, and that creates a huge amount of positive impact.
All right, just it's a segue from what Prashant had mentioned, that at the end of the day, CX is going to be the ultimate retention factor for a lot of the brands. Let's take a quick audience poll at this juncture. Which retention channel works for you? Mail, let's see how many hands. Okay, 0. Push notifications, all right. Retargeted advertising. Push notifications are still, as you mentioned, and from a cost perspective, it's still
the economics
cost, and
dictates
I
the
think everyone
choices.
is
all right. Let's get down to the brass tacks right now. Taking forward what Sudhakar mentioned about experimentation with the brand, I'll take it in the context of the purchase funnel and understand how brands are experimenting to optimize each stage of that purchase funnel, and how do they take the successful experiments to the mainstream. So Raghu, let me come to you for the Myntra experience in this. How do you experiment and then take things mainstream?
Sure. Yeah, we don't release anything to the entire user base without experimentation at Myntra. So any new feature, any new capability that we launch has to go through A/B testing and experimentation. So maybe I'll give you a couple of examples along the funnel, right? So one of the things that we recently looked at is, what we call a shopping continuity cards, right, at the top of the funnel. So if you browse something or you search for something, show those products up at the top. So again, we experimented on various ways of, how we kind of show those products, where we show those products, and all of that, and then we rolled it out to the entire user base, right? So now if you go a little bit further down, so let's say our product detail page, right? So we already have product recommendations there. But we wanted to kind of introduce a couple of other nuances here, right? So we have, if somebody who is speed sensitive, who wants these products delivered, faster, show product recommendations keeping that in mind, right, as another separate set of selections, right? Or the other content that I talked about from Myntra Studio, right? How do we show content, relevant content there in the shopping funnel, right? So again, we experimented on this, where to again show this, for what kind of users, what is the current intent of the user, and accordingly, show these, right? So again, a lot of experimentation there. Or, if we saw that, like, for example, for non-logged in users, we see a drop off like between, the cart and the checkout. So we saw some friction points there, so we tried to solve it in a couple of ways. Again, experimentation, and then kind of rolled out the thing that worked the best to the entire user.
So how do you determine that which is working the best right now? What's the thought behind, all right, this works and this doesn't?
It's completely data driven, right? So we do these A/B experiments. We wait for to reach some significance in terms of the number of users, statistical significance of the number of users, and see that, okay, that's what works. Because when we design something, I mean, we have certain things in mind, but it's like you can never, completely expect what the user, perceives and, what they see. So what you see happening with the user base on the field is the real test. So it's all data driven. That's all.
Prashant, your thoughts on this?
Absolutely, I would second that. I think it's absolutely data-driven, right? I think needs a lot of experimentation on the product. I'll share a few examples as well. Now, as I was saying, retention or any growth is about customer lifecycle management, right? One needs to create segmentation frameworks, right? Some are high-value segments, mid-value segments, and so on. We do our experimentation across each of these segments. So a couple of cases in point. Let's say, for example, one segment is a new user segment, right? Someone who's downloading and installing the app for the first time. For them, you want them to sample the product as fast as they can and minimize their barrier to adoption, right? In that case, you would tend to give them a free delivery, right? If you take delivery charges from other customers, right, only on the first order. You might also want to give them a discount, right, on their first order, right, in order to sample the product. So that's one example. The other thing, we also have a customized onboarding flow for anyone downloading the app. We look at data in terms of, let's say, ethnicities, because we take let's say names and surnames as well. We look at geographies on where a customer is downloading the app. Depending on the geography, depending on the area where they've downloaded the app from, the storefront gets personalized. Yeah, so that's one way of going about it for new users. For, let's say, more habitual users, and I think habit formation is something which has been used here, right? That's the ultimate goal for retention. For users who are more habitual onto the platform, one example could be on the homepage itself, have a widget which is essentially your recently purchased launches, because you also want to minimize the time to checkout. Another could be of new launches, right? And I think this is one area on the homepage itself, which essentially leads to increase in conversion. On the checkout page, for example, if somebody has purchased a chicken curry cut, we look at lookalike audiences, people who purchase chicken curry cuts, and then we look at past behaviors. What have lookalike audiences also purchased, and hence the product. A widget comes on the cart page to recommend certain other products to increase the average order value. So that's another way to go about experimentation frameworks.
And what's the time period between experimentation and mainstream deployment? How much time do you usually give?
So till we have a statistical significance. So essentially, it's between 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah. Okay. So if we see great results within 2 weeks and we run, let's say, split tests, right, A, B, C, D, right, in that sense, if there are 4 different releases, and if we see incredible movement on one particular front, then we try and scale it up to, let's say, others. So it can be a conversion increase, it can be an average order value increase, and so on.
And I guess a key factor there is also overcoming data complexity. If you're doing it in a time frame of 2 to 4 weeks, you really need to know your data in terms of gaining insights from the experiments that you've done, and knowing which idea to go with when it comes to the mainstream, and which ideas not to pursue for the time being. Monisha, let me get your thoughts on this, in terms of overcoming data complexity to get more clarity on retention rate matrices. Any thoughts on that? Any best practices that you would like to share?
Sure. So regardless of the type of retention metrics a company is targeting, right, D60, 30, M0, M1, churn retention, movement between different RF clusters, RFM clusters, one thing always stays common is the way data infrastructure behind that works, let's say storage, processing, querying, visualization, and then at some point you have to combine the efforts you can do as a company, and you have to blend that in with any help you can get from the tools as well. As CleverTap does that job very nicely, right, that it can provide you that the headache of handling that infrastructure of data is not with you, but then there are different stakeholders which want slicing and dicing of that data, which probably a tool cannot provide, and that is when it becomes an infrastructure problem for the company or a core data engineering problem for the company. Next, coming back to the last conversation you had, right, on experimentation, sometimes you purely make a retention practice just to, you want to devise it in a way that you can gather more and more data and information so that you can retain better and create even better product in future, right? And that creates another level of headache again, because now you have to again think it from the beginning, storage, processing, querying, visualization, and how do you make it relevant for the 10 different teams and stakeholders in the company. So what we did was we took where we could, we took help of tools like CleverTap, and where we couldn't, where we took help of data infrastructure as a data engineering capability. Initially, we were struggling a lot with the storage and the processing mechanisms and the execution engine behind that. Though we were pretty strong at execution behind that as well from a tech perspective, Presto, Spark, there are a lot of things. But the storage was sorted once we migrated over to Iceberg as a format. That really helped us scale as a company, and right now at least I don't see that as a challenge. So choice of technology plus whatever tool you can have, because sometimes it's a temporal problem as well. You don't want to make the same choices over time. Things, data points, things, how do you manage data, that also changes with time. So you have to, that part is where tools really help you well, but it has to be backed with a very solid data engineering infrastructure as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Nirmal, let me bring in good points raised by Monish, especially at the aspect of stakeholder expectations, because while we now have providers like CleverTap which are helping companies kind of tide over some of the complexity issues, I want to know from you how do you balance things out where you let the experts handle some things, but some things for your company which are unique to you, you do on your own. How do you maintain that balance, especially on this data complexity aspect?
Yeah, so I have an internal joke going saying that if data is the new oil, the world is full of oil now, because there's so much of pipelines breaking that you'll see. But yeah, data engineering is, they are the gods. So we just need to get all the data together. And the amount of data that you have, right from, for us, the kind of areas that they're searching from before a transaction, then DL, the driving license where they are from, to getting into a person who has come to our app but has not transacted, then has transacted, discount sensitivity, post that, how was the driving behavior, all that on one side of the platform for the guest, and also on the host side, right? There is another side of the host side. So now, how do you match the right car, the right host, to the right guest? That is our biggest challenge. And how do I ensure that the same person who had that once comes back, possibly for the same car? If he has taken this car, should I show the same car? Or should I show him a different car? I keep asking my team, so let's say a person took a 2-day trip in Delhi and a person took a 2-day trip in Chennai. Would you send the same things to him or her? Because the Chennai person may be a guy who went to Pondicherry, likes the beaches, and Delhi, maybe he went to Shimla, right? So are you going to sell the same thing to them? No, right? So the amount of complexity that comes in is huge. So what we try to do is that get into as many slices as possible. Yeah, it becomes a little unwieldy. But then after that, you keep experimenting with new ideas. And then, yeah, whichever one works, we start scaling that.
All right. Any personal mantra you have when you have to make those decisions? What guides you?
No, only data.
Only data.
Try everything. I mean, so obviously, I've always found that, many times I'm the most stupid person in the room. I'll go tell some great idea and figure out that was very stupid. So I don't do that anymore.
You just let the data do the talking.
Let's do that.
All right. Abhishek, let me get you in to kind of comment on what the gentleman has said, especially what Moni said about managing expectations, but also how providers like CleverTap are playing a role in helping companies kind of tide along. And if you could add some perspectives on the tools that every enterprise needs in its kind of engagement arsenal when it tries to hyper-personalize customer experience at scale, because this is the age of instant gratification. So your thoughts?
Yeah. Actually, I'll take a cue from what Nirmal said about data, right? Data is a new fuel, then we have got a whole lot of fuel. The challenge is today, what we are dealing with, it's not the lack of data. It is about the way data can be put to use to provide the kind of experiences that we want to provide to our customers. The availability of the data in real time in the context of the customer is a principal challenge today as brands, as enablers for brands. And to do that, what you need sort of is an operating system approach. See, today what happens is we look at different use cases in our business, and we look at certain point solutions or certain approaches to storing data. Over a period of time, very quickly, we realize that the data is fragmented, it's siloed. It's very, very difficult to stitch the data together. Even if you're able to stitch the data together, the context is lost because it takes time to move the data from one piece to another, and so on and so forth. So what really helps brands is an operating system concept, and especially when you think about hyper-personalization, because hyper-personalization is a very complex problem. We are talking about consumer journey. If you look at the consumer journey for every brand, it's going to be like we saw for Swiggy, right? Pretty complex, right? And that was just like at a high level. You go deep down, taking a deep view of it, it gets very, very complex. So when you're trying to solve a complex problem, you have to keep like some of the foundational elements right. And the critical thing that we have seen that helps a brand succeed, and what we have learned by working with the brands, because candidly, the product that we have today, we didn't build it all by ourselves. We built it along with the customers that we had. They showed us their needs and how those needs can be met through CleverTap product, and we build against those needs, against those understanding of those use cases. So once you have the data, so the critical thing is, one is to have the data in one single place, and especially when you're trying to engage with the audience, when you're trying to engage with the user. We kind of, in terms of A/B testing, we looked at it, we looked at analytics part of it. When you stitch all of this together, what is really required is to be able to analyze the data with respect to user behavior, user actions, derive those necessary insights, make those decisions. Secondly, be able to kind of create those cohorts, those segments, including the segment of one. When we think about hyper-personalization at the extreme end, it is about the segment of one, catering to millions of users one at a time in their own unique manner. And third is be able to do engagement at the same time. Like once you create a segment, and if you have to do the engagement with the audience, it should be a split-second thing. It shouldn't be a time-consuming task. So that's how we have thought about solving the problem, working with the customers that we have, where we provide the platform that allows brands to do all of this. Like we have a proprietary database. Actually, this is interesting. I'll share a little bit here. So when you think about most of MarTech companies, you think about feature capabilities that you want to build. We actually took a very different approach. We spent the first 18 to 24 months of a journey in terms of building a database. Because we realized that the needs that our customers have, the needs that consumers have, it requires a very different approach. So we built a proprietary database that we call as Tesseract DB. It's a patented database, which allows us to do what we do. And all of the customer data gets stored in it. And that makes it extremely easy for the brands to be able to analyze the data, segment the users, engage with the users very easily. And again, as I said about the scale, right, when you asked that question in the beginning, right, you have to do this multiple times during the day. Now imagine the lives of your teams, right? It gets very, very complex if all they have to do is shuffle their data between systems. So we made it extremely easy even for the users to do automation.
All right.
Like trigger-based campaigns, journeys, you can set up things like that that make it extremely easy.
So in a sense, you provide the canvas, the paintbrush, the paint, everything. Your customers or companies that we have, they just need to paint an arresting picture for the customer that
Absolutely.
uses them. All right. Sudhakar, let me get your perspective on this. The tools that every enterprise should have in their engagement arsenal as they scale up, especially considering unique experiences are the name of the game, and instant gratification is what everyone is looking for. In that context, considering many brands have scaled up within Mensa brands, some best practices that you could share in terms of the tools that they should have.
Yeah. Before getting to the tools, continuing the data data as a new fuel, right? General, people, at least in my organization, beyond technology, if data is not available, their general response is the data pipeline is broken, right? So now there is a pipeline, that's all, right? Coming to the tools, right? I think, look, I mean, couple of years back, right? Data platform as a technology itself was evolving, right? But today there is an abundance of solution, to be very honest, right? And we are spoiled by choices. The problem is not data, it's not data availability, right? It's largely about ability to make best use of the technology, ability to draw best insights from it, and then put it on, put it in action. I think that's more important in my opinion, right? I can go into the tool sort of stuff. I will not go very detailed, but just high level, right? It's very, very simple, right? You need to have a system to aggregate the data, able to synthesize the information, draw, deeper actionable insights out of it. You need system which can do segmentation and do more customer segment specific behavioral insights, right? You need a system which can help you in automating the workflow and developing a more coherent communication, across different channels. And then obviously having a right experimentation platform to keep, this flywheel going sort of stuff. That's pretty much, is what I'm sure every company will be doing, and that's what we are also doing, right? But the real crux lies in, making best use of this. And I think there, as I said, right, there are a lot of solutions out there. Pick any which works best for you, which you are more familiar with, and then just go with it. Right? And I can just tell you from my own experience, when we started Mensa last year, right, at least first couple of months, we were just evaluating what is the right technology, what is the best technology, and things like those. But then we realized, like, it works. I mean, all the technologies have reached to a level of maturity where it can work. Just pick one which works best for you, from where you are most familiar, and that gets job done, sort of stuff, right? So that's what we are, we are doing right now.
All right. For all the new initiatives, though, still the question remains of ROI. Kitna deti hai? That question never goes away. So let me take the conversation in that direction and come to you, Krishnan. From the context of ROI, let's say high value customers, those are the targets. So how do you identify and engage with high value customers to improve your ROI, and in turn, how does that impact your broad marketing strategy?
Not necessarily high value customers. One of the analytics patterns we identified in our jewelry business is that the small buyer of today is typically the growing buyer of, let's say, 3 or 4 years later, right? And that particular insight is spoken about in every jewelry team meeting, whether it's in the store or centrally. The point being that when the customer walks into the store for the first time, please extend exactly the same Tanishq level of courtesy to someone who's, let's say, buying a simple ring or bangle, as you would extend to someone who's come in for wedding jewelry.
Or it could be the reverse. Buy a chain first, then get an engagement ring.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Right.
And then comes a whole wedding purchase.
So ROI over a period of time is something which we measure very carefully, right? Our loyalty program has been running for almost a decade now. And so therefore, many of our customers who have been with us, we really know their lifetime value, their purchase patterns, and so on and so forth. And like I mentioned, there is a very strong relationship with the store. And in fact, in our jewelry business, to call it B2C would be a bit of a misnomer. It is actually almost a key account management relationship. And we have seen many instances where when our salesperson gets transferred to another store, the customer who lives near the store actually is willing to travel several kilometers to the new store just because she wants to engage with the same person. It's incredible, right? So, really speaking, ROI is about being able to analyze not just for 1 year or 1 season, but across time. Deliver the same, Anu spoke about it, right? That elevated level of experience, try and deliver it uniformly. And then customers do churn, many customers do remain, and frankly, data speaks for itself, like all of us have already said. Just have to apply the right hypothesis, and usually with the right set of hypotheses, the data begins to speak.
But you're also in the business where there's a lot of emotional motivation for customers, right? So if you can outline some of those emotional motivators that you specifically look at for driving.
Let me give you an example. It's an old one, so I guess I can mention it here. It's not new and confidential. So many years back, we started requesting our customers for their annual milestones, birthdays, spouse's birthday, anniversary. Many customers shared, and several did not. And then we started giving out offers. Plus minus 15 days of that particular milestone, you get a discount. And many customers came back and said, why am I not getting the discount? Aap date bataiye, aapko bhi discount milega. So over the years, we have this information about millions of our customers. And so we are able to time our offers and outreach to that level of detail. And I should actually mention an anecdote at the risk of taking some time, okay? In 2020, you know what started. And a friend of mine in Mumbai, he calls me and says, Krishnan, I went to your Tanishq store and because of the pandemic and I wasn't there in that 15-day window. And आप लोग ने मेरे को discount नहीं दिया. So I ended up going and buying somewhere else. He was just angry. So I spoke to my jewelry retail head. The next day the policy was changed to plus minus 30. And my colleague in Mumbai, the regional manager, he started following up with my friend and forced him to come to the store. And the guy actually bought twice. But he was so happy that his input led to the change in policy right the next day. So we do try to be fairly agile with respect to taking feedback.
So do you go to showrooms kind of to test and see how things are happening?
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of responses?
Merchandise combinations, we keep experimenting all the time, right? We have a very strong sense of what sells in which part of the country. And so therefore our collections are also tuned to that. So if you go to a Lucknow store versus, say, a store in Bangalore or Chennai, you will see the layout different. The celebrities we engage with are obviously different for different parts of the country, right? The South-based celebrities are different than, say, the celebrity we engage in Bengal. So we are, in that sense, a very regional business, and we absolutely engage with the region sensibilities as we have understood them for so many years.
All right, Raghu, let me bring you into the conversation. What are the emotional motivators for Myntra? I mean, when we look at Titan, when we look at the range that they have, it's easier to see that emotional connect. But for Myntra, what are the emotional motivators that you look at to connect with customers? And especially, how do you craft personalized messages then? Because in the presentation that Anuj had and the Q&A, there was a question raised on how do you not over-personalize, make it a sort of a balanced interaction. So your thoughts and best practices on this.
Yeah, so any messaging that you do, right, has to be timely, relevant, and personalized, right? That's when you get the best response and engagement. As somebody was, calling out earlier, like something as simple as like making sure that you reference the name of the person in the message actually gets a lot more engagement, like 5x times more engagement than something that where it's just generic. Fashion is very emotional anyway, right? So it's like, you can, there are various opportunities to engage the customer at an emotional level. Knowing like the purchase history of a customer, if there are similar brands that are being launched, right? So you can always reach out to the customer saying this is something that you might like. Another classic one is obviously if somebody's left something in their cart and not taken any action, right? And then just send them a reminder, right? So this serves as a nudge as well. But you can take that further, right? So it's like, if say something on your cart and then, you see like it is running out of stock or a price drop. So that's another, messaging that you could do that kind of appeals to their, emotional side as well. So there are various ways that you can engage the customer.
All right. Let's also look at the post-sale aspect of it. You've done the sale, what next? How do you keep the conversation going? Nirmal, especially from, when I used to speak to others who are car manufacturers, again, this question used to come up. But for rental, it's more, it's periodical, so you don't face that problem. But in that sense of a post-sale, once they have rented, how do you make me come? If I've rented from you, how do you make me come back? From a post-sale aspect, what would you like to share with us?
Yeah, so again, in our case, it's not an experience for one moment, right? You're buying it now, or rather you're paying for it now, you're starting the trip in some days, and then you're ending the trip in a few more days later, right? So we've got that much time to engage a person, and post that, what we see is that a person coming back at least to search for something within the next 15 days is amazing for us, which means that there is a huge chance that he'll come back and do a trip very soon. So all our work is always to improve that, the D15 searches, D15 engagement, etc. And there are a lot of things, right? Why do you take a car? You take a car because you want to experience something. You're going somewhere. A lot of times you're taking a vacation with family, with friends, gone somewhere. How can you get them back on social media? share that. The moment the person ends the trip and says that I had a fantastic experience, somebody says 4, 5, trip and feedback 4, 5, we know exactly where, we know where he went, but then we don't use that so much. But we're gonna request them for a, like, do you want to share this, share your pictures? Because most of us take pictures along with cars, right? So you get them to engage on social media through that. And then remind them that, okay, there is a reward that you got because of your driver score. Or let's say we have put some more Z points or rewards on your, in the next 15 days, you can take this trip. It's like an exploding coupon that you create to bring them back. So especially for the 1 to 2, the first transaction to the second one, there are a lot of those things that we do.
And content, are you looking at doing more content-based initiatives?
Yeah, so essentially most of these pictures that we're talking about eventually have to become user-generated content. Not right now on the app, but probably that is where it'll go. Right? Eventually, if I can get featured on your app because I had a great trip, that's amazing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
I would
it's
love
a
it.
win-win, so to say.
And everybody will go and talk about it. That's exactly what you want.
It's like zindagi na milegi to.
Yeah.
Munish, let me come to you. I mean, from the innerwear business perspective, post a sale, how does the communication happen? How do you keep the user interested?
Well, I'll say it's much more trickier for us.
Yeah.
Generically saying, very high retention is what every brand aspires towards, which means customer has to make a choice, come back to you, keep coming back to you, keep coming back to you, keep buying, and when that final buy happens, that is the true evidence that you have gained that trust. Post that is when the responsibility lies with you, right? And for a category like lingerie where Zivame operates, inherently women are more hesitant to interact, right? Hesitant towards profiling of data, hesitant towards walking into a showroom where glasses already don't have a cover, right? That is how, that is the learnings we have seeing this in Indian market. Any day a Zivame showroom performs, and I think 4x or 5x more than any other neighboring lingerie category shop. Primarily it's driven by the personalized experience we provide in terms of we personalize that experience towards the category more than towards the person more, because that is practically where the offline game changes, right? That is one part of it. Second, towards the digital part, when a buy happens, we focus very hard on category level education. That is, as you rightly said, very content heavy as well. And that is one of the primary loyalty drivers for the company as well. That once a buy happens, we tell them, okay, this is not only a piece of apparel you have bought for yourself, this is also a hygiene thing. This is also something which is dressable in multiple ways. This is also something which you should change over this period of time. These are the things you should notice about the product. These are the type of products in the category which can help you handle these medical conditions better, right? Or specifically if you are in this phase of your life as a woman, this is what you should go after. So there are multiple aspects you have to cover post-buy, which comes to a brand as a responsibility as well. Now, saying that is one part of it. Second would be, I think second is a derivative of this only. Once you cover these things right, then next thing comes that you know what he has purchased, you know what the intrinsic intent, taste, explicit intent shown on that particular session of that customer is. That is when you start using then those insights and tell the user that, okay, we know you have done this transaction, you can use it in these many more ways, which is slightly more superficial than the previous part of the answer. But that also relates pretty well. That these are the new things happening, you have taken this pie of the new happening in the market right now, and this is how you can use it best. It can be content heavy, or it can be slightly more, let's say, a blanket in nature as well.
So some of the factors which actually work against the physical retailers, they work for you as a digital retailer because it's a more personalized and knowledgeable experience, and it's not something typically as a user I would give much more thought on. It's great if the platform takes that initiative and knows me better, knows my purchasing habits better, and suggests me the right kind of
correct. Platform absolutely has to consider itself in the state of luxury and think all touch points of a customer, and then say that post buy what all responsibilities can I lay on myself to improve your experience, even if you don't ever come again.
All right.
Right? That's a responsibility which has to be taken very seriously. So if that works, especially for our category, that's very well.
All right. So Dakar, let me come to you. I asked you last time about organizational tools. Now I want to ask you about the organization structure. How should organization structure themselves, in your opinion, to maximize, say, customer CLV, as in be CX focused? From an organization structure perspective, what are some things that you would suggest?
In general, right, and I'm talking more from the D2C point of view, right? The number of transactions that a consumer has on the platform, we don't have a platform, by the way, right? These are like different brand stores, right? So the general need states are not as frequent as some of the other, platforms like, let's say, Licious or Myntra or some of the others, right? So it is important for us to build this long-term relationship, or build this relationship with the consumers, right? Which starts even before the purchase, continues during the purchase, and more importantly after the purchase, and even after purchase, right? For example, just gardening as a category, right? It's people who are into gardening, they are very passionate about this, right? And they want to take care of things over a longer period of time. So there's a lot of assistance that they need, right? So we have created a kind of centralized, I would say, org structure, where we are able to look at each category and then ensure that across the organization, right, we are developing this long-term relationship and giving a 360 degree experience to the consumer across their journey with the brand, right? So coming to the structure part, we have, and I think that could be common across, right? There has to be a centralized retention, central team which has retention as the core, goal. And then there has to be multiple functions across the organization with which this core team will work to get that 360 degree experience built, right? So for example, you need a data analytics team, right, which is also aggregating the data, synthesizing insights and all that kind of stuff. You need a content and a creative team which can build relevant content, right? More personalized content depending on consumer location, for example, the age group, the type of category, and so on and so forth, right? You need a you need to have a marketing team which can build campaigns for these different segments that you have, come across. They should be able to build stitch these campaigns across the lifespan, right? Lastly, I would say it just does not stop with this group, right? Ideally, it should be part of every function of your organization. So to say, even to customer experience, for example, customer support and customer experience, right? This insight of this customer segment and how to respond to this customer segment is critical, right? So in that way, this information has to percolate to every part of your function, right? So that's the kind of structure that you put all the way from central to more, I would say, horizontal, but ensure that this underlying theme is being percolated across the functions.
All right, Abhishek, so how does that underlying theme get enacted from the many brands that you work with? Because silos are an issue, right? At the end of the day, we all know that we want to be built for customer success. But as we mentioned in the question on data complexity, silos do come in. So how do you overcome those silos, and how do you structure yourself for customer success?
Yeah. So I think I can actually add a little bit of a lens in terms of how I think about my own customers a little bit, and then relate to what our customers actually do. So when I look at our customer base, and my team engages with the customers end to end from the time they come on board with us until like the long-term journey with us, right? And that continues. The critical aspect of building relationship with the consumer is a consumer journey. So even the brands that we work with, the way they basically operationalize the org structure is around the journey of the consumers. Different brands have different journeys for the consumers, but that is the one consistent thread that runs across everyone. Now that brings into play different parts of the organization, like the product management as a function plays a pivotal role. The user experience is an important component of the overall CX. And the product managers are a big user of all the analytic capabilities that we provide. Then also engineers use a platform. They want to see the feature which they're deploying. Are those features working in line with their expectation? They also try and experiment in terms of what's the most efficient way to integrate the technological aspects. So even engineering plays a pivotal role. But a lot of the work in terms of engaging with the consumers falls upon the growth marketing, the CRMs, and the marketing teams in terms of engaging with the users, making sure that those users are having a compelling experience through those personalized and relevant and contextual messaging that is happening. And then even when it comes to the post-sale part of it, the critical aspect is you don't consider the post-sale part when in post facto. You actually start thinking about it in the beginning, which is how do you ensure that you have a higher probability of bringing this customer back into the platform. So the teams upfront who are engaging with the users, they're thinking about the repeat purchase actually at that precise moment. So that's how we see the org structure in most companies that we engage with. It's product management, there's marketing that is involved, and then engineering to some extent.
All right. And what about changing customer behavior, Prashant? I mean, we spoke earlier about how Delicious managed to do it. We have been talking about, say, the customer giving information, but in case of certain products or categories where brands have successfully changed customer behavior, Delicious being one of them, what would you like to share as to how to successfully do that?
So a couple of points on that front. I think one is, like in this country, 70% of the people eat meat, roughly 8 to 12 times a month. Yeah, but it doesn't happen through an online channel. So Delicious is trying to do two disruptions. One is get farm fresh, let's say meat, raw meat, to your homes, right, during those 8 to 12 times a month that you eat meat. And the second is coming up with ready to cook products. So one part on, let's say, on online adoption. So using, again, a very data-driven marketing and a very data-driven segmentation framework is what we do. To increase that online adoption, so let's say, for example, if a consumer has let's say, purchased a rohu in their first order, which is a fish, yeah, what is the propensity to go on to the second order? In the second order, if they actually purchase a chicken curry cut versus a chicken biryani cut, yeah. So, and purchasing a chicken biryani cut increases the probability of moving on to the third order by 20%. So that is the personalization which we will use to actually go make that intervention on the product to increase that probability of retention. The other thing which we also do is, let's say, in terms of our ready-to-cook products, right? Now we have a bunch of products which are ready to cook. We just launched a biryani. What we do is we test it with a super loyal cohorts. Now in the segmentation framework which I said, there's a super loyal and a power user cohort which lies even above loyalty, which is essentially your profit pool, right? Which gives you your revenue as well as your margin. We test out our products with this set of consumers, right? And once it's perfected, we actually go back and do a mass launch, starting with lookalikes with a higher product rating because they've already rated it high, and hence that leads to an increase in adoption of niche products as well.
All right. Before we come to the audience Q&A, I just have a few more questions left for the panel. Quick one for you, Abhishek. Do's and don'ts. We spoke about marketing automation earlier, but to look at it from a guidebook perspective, the do's and don'ts of marketing automation at scale, what would you share?
Yeah, so when we think about hyper-personalization and marketing automation, one of the things is when we do hyper-personalization, we have to do this in a privacy-compliant manner. We need to know where we draw the line. We shouldn't go overboard because customers get uncomfortable at that point. So that's one thing that we have seen. The second is in terms of how much engagement is right. Quantifying that is an important aspect. Should we be engaging with our customers 3 times a day? Should we be engaging with them 10 times in a day? What we have seen is brands, after they look at the data, they arrive at their own conclusion that, okay, given a consumer base, given the segments, maybe this is the optimal level of engagement that we need to have as a brand. So that's a second aspect. The third is, I would strongly, like what I've seen that works in the field is to do marketing automation in a credible manner, you have to think about the data. And that allows you to provide much better experience to the user, because when the data is siloed, we think that the user experience is being personalized, but the point is, what about the part that we haven't considered at that point in time? It becomes challenging. So those would be my top 3 in terms of do's and don'ts that that I've seen work in the field when brands apply it thoughtfully in the context of their customers.
All right, that gives a nice cue to my final question to all of you. The next frontier of personalization in customer experience that excites you the most, considering data unlocks so many possibilities. Anything that excites you from that frontier of customization or personalization of a customer experience in, say, the next 3-4 years or 5 years? Krishna?
I'm sure you're aware that besides jewelry and watches, we also take care of your eyes. We have an eye care business. And what we are working on is actually a predictive model. Given the amount of time that even youngsters and children are staring at screens, eye deterioration is almost inevitable. And now techniques are emerging with which it is possible to at least slow down the onset of eye disease. And so therefore we are trying to merge all this knowledge with the exact characteristics of each individual who has come to us and shared personal information, which is essentially medical information, relevant stuff. And also we have their prescription. So is it possible to send very precise advice, invite them to the store next for the next checkup, and in general be able to help them slow down or even halt the progressive degeneration of the eye. That's something I'm absolutely excited about.
All right. Raghu?
Yeah, solving personalization at scale, as we all know, is in itself a really big challenge, and to do it well, right? But to talk about some of the newer things and things looking forward, one of the unique challenges in our industry, the fashion industry, is the size and fit problem, right? So which is very, very related to personalization. So as we all know, I mean, not all the same sizes across brands don't fit you the same. So how do you recommend the right size for a person, irrespective of which brand they are shopping for? Another one is like if we can use real-time signals of the customer and know the current intent of the customer, and then based on that we can then personalize the experience in terms of whether he or she is a casual browser or somebody who's keen on actually buying something is another one. Another one that we've seen is, we see users use the same user account, I mean, shopping for the entire family, right? So it's like then again,
That's the tricky one.
That's the tricky one. So how do you differentiate that and then come up with the right experience, for depending on what he or she is doing at that point in time. Profile-based personalization, right? That's another interesting challenge to solve. So
finally, my shopping cart would look reasonable to anyone looking in.
Yeah. So even from a technology point of view, right? So we're looking at now, as we know, like you need to adapt to change very quickly. So newer techniques is what you need to use. Something like reinforcement learning, right? Coupled with like multi-arm bandit techniques, right? Is something that we need to do. Yeah, I mean, so there are various things that we need to kind of take this forward from advances point of view.
All right. A quick view from you, Prashant, before we go to the rest.
Sure. I think a lot of folks have spoken about personalization of products and platforms, right? And to me, I think while that's essential and integral, what excites me about personalization is essentially what we look for personalization of services. What do I mean by that? We are also a delivery platform, right? And which a lot of us are here. Personalization of services would also mean like, do I need a 30-minute delivery or do I need a next day delivery? Because at the end of the day, there is limited number of capacity which a company has, right, to service its customers. And at the checkout, right, if you can personalize that, I think that would be, to me, the next game of personalization. It's not a platform level personalization, but a service level personalization.
All right, service level personalization. Monish, your thoughts?
Well, I would love to see a hyper-personalized discovery as a framework kind of thing. So when a company grows, right, it increases the width it can sell to people, right? That tells people have same amount of time to see more, given that it's a e-com retail B2C use case, but typically the time remains the same across the industry. Now the company has, this problem becomes very complex for the company because they have to make sure they are showing relevant stuff, fresh stuff, diverse stuff, if possible serendipity as well. And if everything works out, then the company has to make sure then the balance of revenue and margin is not touched by any means, right? It becomes essentially very hard for the company. And at those times, you are trying to learn what the customer actually likes and you are trying to balance that out also. So let's say if there is if someone can solve the discovery as a framework problem and let's say if possibly the best case would be they open source it. I think I love it, and I think you include the customer element into it, and you have a perfect mix of a hyper-personalized discovery framework. And it can be open statement for the audience as well, right? If someone can make it, I'll be the first guy to buy your subscription, and there goes your MVP validation as well.
Well, Abhishek is all smiles. All this valuable data is going to him, and maybe all these questions could be addressed in the new iterations of the products that come up. But before I go to Abhishek, let me quickly get in perspectives from Sudhakar and Nirmal as well. Then you can kind of bring it all together. Sudhakar, the next frontier of personalization that excites you.
In my opinion, next frontier will be giving very localized, personalized experience, right? Because see, I'll just talk about India, right? India is generally, now a lot of people are a large population is yet to start transacting online, right? So generally the cycle starts with your social and communication, then you go to transaction, and you go to payments, and then you go to transactions, right? That's the general cycle. Now, as many of these early adopters, as they come on the platforms, right, this hyper-personalization, all the tools that we have now, it has to be custom built for this localized, kind of experience. So in my opinion, that is going to be the next frontier and the next challenge for all of us to see how we can make this entire hyper-personalization really relevant for that kind of, those geographies and those locations in the coming days.
Nirmal?
Yeah, I'm actually intrigued about how do you motivate people, right? So we as a company live on travel. We believe that if we can actually motivate people to take that trip that they always wanted to, that is what we want to do, right? So now, if I can get that person in Chennai who went to Pondicherry to take the next trip to Ooty, or I can suggest that, or it becomes motivation. If I can get them to come back to the app and look for new things that they can do, and personalized, of course, and it has to be personalized, right? So that every person who comes in the next time we should know what he wants to do, or what we should actually be able to suggest what he wants to do.
Right.
That is what we are trying to do.
Know them before the customer themselves know what they want. All right.
We have to be ambitious, right?
They don't call it moonshot for nothing, right? But then again, that's what pushes the boundaries further. As we continued that song, right? रेखाओं का खेल है मुकद्दर, रेखाओं से मात खा रहे हो. So it comes in, as we finish that song, I guess the topic of borders also coming and breaking those boundaries are what gets you to that next level.
So what if we could become the Instagram for travel? Right?
Like I said, Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, that's an inspiration for a lot of folks. So let's see what part 2 brings to the table. Abhishek, the final word from you, bringing it all together, the next frontier of personalization that excites you and bases all the inputs that you receive. What do you think is possible?
Yeah. So I think those were great inputs. Actually, I learned a lot in the process. I think when we think about personalization today, a lot of hyper personalization that is happening in the context of some cohorts. We're still creating segments. Directionally, what I believe is, whichever way we look at it, eventually we will move into a direction where we will look at the segment of one, which is being able to provide that unique experience to the single user on the basis of their own behavior, not as a part of some cohort. And all of the capabilities and the use cases that we are talking about, a lot of that will get catered to as we start enabling and start using that at scale. From an overall landscape standpoint, I think the landscape will keep evolving. We are talking about app and web. Metaverse is out there on the horizon. We have started looking at it. We have started thinking about it. But if I was to kind of summarize this from a point of view of the consumers and the point of view of the brands, there are 2 key insights which I like to share. The one is in terms of the consumer perspective. So there was a report that came out recently, McKinsey published it, which was about hyper-personalization. And they categorically stated that today's consumer do not want personalization, they demand it. Like 70% of the users in their study actually said they demand personalization from the brands. So today, hyper-personalization is no more a nice to have, it's a must have to execute on a business. The second is, this is based on things that we have learned, the amount of impact hyper-personalization has on KPIs like user retention and conversion rates. Now, you put this in perspective, especially in the current economic climate that we are in. Retention is a single metric in the business that increases your top line and reduces the bottom line, thereby improving your profitability. One single KPI that helps move the needle on all three important metrics of the business. So from that standpoint, it's a very, very important thing to do.
On that note, I'd like to wrap up this very wide-ranging conversation on creating hyper-personalized customer experiences. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing your insights. And on that note, I hand it over to Anita.
Thank you. I think we should give them a big round of applause. Very interesting and very informative session that was. Thank you.